What's up, everybody? This video is going to be about my experience of having a family member that developed a mental illness or a personality disorder and how I handled it or how I dealt with it. So the purpose of this video is basically to deliver an important message. I feel compelled to give my story. I feel in my gut that there's someone out there that needs to hear this. There's someone out there that has a family member that is caught in a downward spiral. They're not getting better, and the reality is this family member could have a mental illness or they could have developed a personality disorder. So this is what happened to me. I'm going to tell you guys about my personal experience, and I'm going to give you the nitty-gritty details about what I went through, and I have a little checklist at the end I want to provide to you guys for you to be honest with yourself, for you to reflect, and to give you some clarity on how you might handle your own situation if you find yourself in this. So this is to anyone out there who's dealing with a narcissist, anyone out there who has a family member who seems a little bit off, someone who's prone to outbursts of anger, just negative behaviors that are continuous and you can kind of recognize a pattern. So anyway, let's give you guys a background. This is my story. So my younger brother, him and I were very close growing up. We were 3 years apart. We went through a lot of the trials and tribulations together in our early lives. We went through our parents' divorce when we were really little. We were always in the same school. We went to the same elementary school. Um, I spent an incredible amount of time with my brother, and we had a lot of disagreements and we fought at times, but overall we were very close and we spent a lot of time with each other because a lot of the time my younger brother was one of the only people I could confide in. And since we were in the same family and we went through our parents' divorce, we would go to our mom's house one week and then the next week we would go to our dad's house. So him and I kind of shared that bond of having what you could call an overbearing stepfather together and just basically going through life together and growing up together. So for the most part, my brother was normal growing up. All growing up, he was a normal kid. He was stubborn for sure, very stubborn, but for the most part, he was a normal guy. He was a good guy. Most of the time, he was a pleasure to be around. I think it's normal for siblings to fight. Him and I definitely spent a lot of time together, so I think the fights though and the disagreements we did have were normal. So I don't think when he was young he had any kind of mental illness or any kind of signs of mental illness, but it was really towards, I guess he was probably 15 or 16 when I started to see the signs of his downward spiral. So one of the key defining moments in this timeline is one day my stepdad found a bong hidden under my brother's bed. And he ended up kicking my brother out of his house, which my mom and other brother Tobias were living in. And this was pretty much at the end of my mom's relationship with my stepdad. So after he got kicked out, my brother went and lived with my grandparents for a little while. And my mom and I ended up moving into an apartment in Moscow, which was in town. We had lived in the country with our stepdad for about 14 years before this. So from about age 4 to about age 18, I had lived in my stepfather's house, but we ended up leaving there. My mom and him broke up. We left there and got an apartment in town, like I said. So my brother ended up coming back from my grandparents' house, and This is when the downward spiral really started, because when my brother returned, he didn't return to physical classes. He ended up going into online school, which in hindsight was probably a very bad decision for my mom and I to support, but he ended up doing online classes, and I think this was detrimental to him because there was a loss of structure in his life. He My mom, I was busy with school myself, and I was wrestling all the time, so I was tied up all the time with wrestling and school, and I wasn't really around very much, and neither was my mom because she obviously worked a full-time job and was pretty busy herself. So my brother was just at home a lot of the time. I think he ended up getting into sleeping in. He became very lackadaisical, and this is really when the downward spiral started. I distinctly remember a moment when I came home. I realized my brother had stolen some money from me to buy weed, and I confronted him about it. And when I confronted him about it, I was just like, "Hey, no, don't ever take money from me again." And I wasn't overly angry or anything, but he just completely snapped at me. We ended up getting into a huge physical altercation, throwing each other around our room, basically trashing our room. But after that, I left and went to track practice and just kind of moved on. But I really remember this as kind of a moment where I realized my brother's anger issues were not normal, because it is not normal to completely snap and get in a physical altercation with someone for simply confronting you about money you stole. So to me, this was the first red flag, and I just basically ignored it. I moved on. I was distracted with school, with sports and stuff. So after high school, I moved into my own apartment and didn't live with my brother for 2 years. But then I started in college, and I wasn't able to work as much and pay my own rent. So I ended up moving into my mom's house where my brother lived. And this ended up being a fatal mistake for me because I was now around my brother a whole lot more, and I was around his negativity a lot more. But somehow I was able to really just deny the situation and deny what was going on. I knew my brother was had some issues. I just never really was honest with myself, and neither was my mom. We were never really honest with ourselves about the extent of his problems, because if you're in this situation, you're gonna be able to relate to this. But when a family member has an issue, it's easy for you to ignore it. It's easy because your emotions are tied up in it. It's easy to not be completely logical about the situation because, like I said, it's someone you hold dear, it's someone in your family, it's someone you have great memories with. So it's easy just to brush it off and think, "Oh, this is just a phase. This is just a phase the person's going through." In my case, I thought it was just a teenage phase my brother was going through. I thought it would get better, but it didn't get better. Over time, my brother became a really bad insomniac, so his sleep schedule just deteriorated, and that's when things started getting worse way quicker. The slope just got steeper and steeper, and it just kept getting worse because he wasn't sleeping at night, and then he was taking it out on me. I was trying to go to school and go to college and stuff, and it was really hard to study and stay focused on school when I was around so much negativity at home. There was no peace in my house because I was living with this guy, and it just it was just constant toxicity. And I don't know how I was able to deny it, but I just completely was in a state of denial about my brother's situation, and I didn't believe his issues were as bad as they were. And I don't think it helped that I was smoking a lot of cannabis and I was drinking with my friends and stuff like that. So on the one hand, I was a little bit sedated for some of this. And sometimes my brother and I would drink together and we would smoke together. So I think partly I was able to sort of avoid the reality of the situation through my own sedation. So I remember distinctly waking up one night. I was sleeping. I woke up in my bed one night and I heard the strangest thing. I hear what sounds to be a conversation going on the other side of the house, but I quickly realize it's not a conversation between a few different people. I realize it's my own brother talking in different voices and literally having a conversation with himself. Like, imagine three people sitting in a room with different voices, but every voice is coming out of one person's mouth. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced, and when I heard it, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was just a real eye-opening moment, because in that moment of time, all of my emotional attachments in the situation, all of my denial completely dissolved, and I was faced with the naked truth. And I realized the truth of the situation is my brother had greatly deteriorated and he had major issues. I'm talking personality issues, narcissism, the whole gamut of personality disorders, and it was bad. Um I still don't know how I was able to deny it for so long, because I lived with my brother for about a year and a half, maybe about 2 years. But yeah, I was able to deny it for a long time. But in that moment of time when I heard him having this weird dialogue with himself, all of the denial and emotions completely left, and I knew right then and there I had to get out as soon as possible. I actually ended up moving to my dad's house the next night. He lived about 3 hours away in the Tri-Cities. I was living in Pullman, Washington at the time. But yeah, that moment hearing my brother talk like that was really what sparked me to completely move. So the next day I packed up anything that would fit in my small sedan and I drove to my dad's house. And I never returned to Pullman. But ever since I left, my brother has just gotten worse and worse and worse. He's actually at this point in time homeless. He's living on the streets. He is a severe alcoholic. He's basically using copious amounts of alcohol to cope with his issues. And to this day, he's never taken any responsibility for his problems. He's in complete denial himself about what's going on, and the only reason he calls my mother and I is to ask for money or to manipulate us in some way so that he can either get some food or some alcohol or just basically do something or get us to do something that he wants. So anyway, guys, that's my story. That's my background dealing with this. So if you find yourself in this situation and you're dealing with someone really bad, I have some advice to give you because I've been through it myself. I've dealt with a very, very toxic person, and I wrote down some steps that I wanted to give to you guys if you find yourself in this situation, because I've had a lot of time to reflect. It's been about 3 years since I've really been around my brother very often, so I've had a lot of time to reflect, and I just want to share some steps with you guys. I have them written down here because I don't want to miss anything. So step number 1. This is an obvious one, but you really just need to be honest with yourself. Does your loved one or family member feel off? What does your gut say? Is this person prone to negative outbursts, negative behaviors, addictive behaviors? Do they have a temper? So that's step 1. Just be honest with yourself. How do you feel when you're around this person? Does it feel like the energy drains, or does this person feel positive to be around? Because chances are that you're gonna have a gut feeling about what's going on, but you're probably just denying it. So just be very careful and and really consider how this person makes you feel. How does this how is your energy when you're around this person? Do you feel deflated or defeated? So, number 2, this is the second step. These are just steps I want you guys to run through, and it's just to help you be honest about what the situation is. So, step 2 is narcissistic tendencies. A narcissist is a parasite. They must feed on a victim to sustain their warped worldview and inflated ego. They use manipulation, gaslighting, and other psychological strategies to get you out of position in order to have you fall for their scheme or to use you to get what they want. The narcissist, when exposed, is actually a very weak, insecure, and deluded person. Be very careful about being involved with one of these, and if you suspect you are dealing with one, you must do your research and remove yourself from the situation as quickly and quietly as possible. So I have done research myself about narcissists and what narcissists are. I didn't really have a good idea about what a narcissist was and how they act until after I had moved away from my brother and done a little bit of my own research. But there's a lot of great information on YouTube, particularly about people who have gone through narcissistic abuse, people who have been in relationships with narcissists, and basically people that have great, solid advice on narcissists. But if you find that you're involved with someone or your family member has narcissistic tendencies, you need to be very careful. These people are very volatile and they will stop at nothing to get what they want, and it's very hard to reason with these people because the narcissist is just I can't think of very much more volatile people than the narcissist. And my best advice to you is to get out of the situation as quickly and quietly as possible. Emphasis on quickly and quietly. You don't want the narcissist to know that you're leaving, and you want to get out of the situation as quick as possible because if you know anything about narcissists, all they want to do is manipulate you, all they want to do is control you, and all they want to do is get you to fall for their scheme to support their warped worldview. That brings us to step 3. I've just created all these steps for you guys and I wrote them down, and here we are, step 3. Are you enabling this person? Helping someone with extreme issues can easily turn into enabling them, especially when you have emotional attachment to the person. This one is difficult and really takes honesty with oneself and even discussion with someone like a friend or a third party in order to see your blind spots. This one's really tough because when you're involved with a family member, you have a history with them, you have great memories with them, they weren't always bad. It's really easy to brush this all off. It's really easy to get into this space of denial and to end up actually enabling the person. Because by sticking around these people and by giving into what they want, you're ultimately enabling them. And this is what I did with my brother. I ended up becoming a huge enabler. I would spend money on him. I would give him rides. I would give him time. I ended up falling for my brother's scheme, and basically I was a tool my brother used to get what he wanted. These people don't care about you. They don't care about what you want. They don't care about how you feel. These people with psychological issues and narcissistic tendencies, it sounds rough, but they really do not care about how you feel. They do not care about how their actions impact others. And you need to be honest with yourself and make sure you're not enabling these people, because it's very easy to become an enabler. Step 4. Plan your exit strategy. The best thing you can do after trying to help the person is leave. If someone won't take responsibility for their actions and continues to deny their destructive behaviors even after you have brought them to their attention, the best thing you can do is detach. These people are often highly negative, and if you aren't careful, you can easily get swept into the chaos, becoming poisoned yourself. This is exactly what happened to me, guys. I was in the situation for way too long and I didn't leave. My denial was so bad. I just thought things would get better and I wasn't honest with myself. So the best thing you can do is leave. Things for me did not get better until I left. Once I left, I was able to get a clear head. I didn't have the negative person, my brother, talking in my ear, giving me his warped ideas. I was removed from it, so I was able to sort of detox. I was able to get away from the toxicity, and I was able to really just clear my head. And I'm just talking from my personal experience, guys. This was a very, very tough experience for me. It's very I can't even say it. I can't put it into words. It's just so tough seeing a family member go through this and seeing someone you love spiral downwards. Um, my brother went from being, an intelligent, oftentimes thoughtful guy to just totally disorderly, totally toxic, and basically just poisoning everyone around him. Now he's a very, very bad alcoholic and he's homeless. He's living on the streets now. And he refuses to acknowledge the impact his actions have on other people. He doesn't care about anyone else's feelings. And there's a lot of people out there like that just fall into these narcissistic or sociopathic or whatever tendencies. People develop mental illnesses. You're not necessarily born with it right away. It can come on later. It can come on as a teenager. And in my experience, my brother, I think his downward spiral was really brought on by the use of drugs like psychedelics and stuff like that, because at one point in time when he was a teenager until he was about 18, 19, 20, he had this obsession with mind altering substances. So I think personally, my theory is that the weed, the drinking, all the combination of the substances he was using actually ended up bringing on his mental illness, and it brought out his mental illness. And then I have another more spiritual theory, and this is really it's not really much of a theory, it's more of a theorem. I've thought about it a lot, and I'll explain to you what happened to my brother. It's this 4-step process that I actually learned from Will Rogers over at the channel Replacing Error with Truth. Replacing Error with Truth. I learned it from there. It's a 4-step process: oppression, depression, recession, and possession. I don't like to use the word demon because the whole church thing and the whole historically the word demon doesn't really have a good connotation, but to me a demon is just a negative thought form entity. It is a group of related thoughts that are highly negative, highly destructive, and highly toxic. So I believe that my brother's um, mind was hijacked, for lack of a better term, by a demon, a group of related thoughts that is highly, highly negative and highly, highly destructive. My brother's whole thought process was replaced with a destructive thought process. And here's how it started: oppression, depression, recession, and then finally possession. His mind was possessed by this. It all started with oppression. And oppression is perceived. I think in our childhood, my brother perceived our stepfather as very oppressive. Um, he probably saw our stepdad as overbearing, and the treatment my brother, from his perception, thought that my stepdad was cruel, harsh, and unjust. So that's step one. My brother felt like he was oppressed. Step two, depression. My brother became depressed. His his energy was lowered, his upbeat positivity was lowered, because in his mind he felt like he was oppressed. After he was depressed, after my brother became depressed, he had recession, which I think this phase really happened after my brother came back from my grandparents' house and was in online school. So his life lost a lot of structure, so he was on recession. And I define recession as a voluntary stoppage of normal activities. So his normal life was put on halt and he was in recession. And after that, as they say, the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So my brother had all this free time doing whatever he wanted. My mom and I were too busy to really pay much attention to him. And he just spiraled downwards. And this is where I think he became possessed by all these negative thoughts. And all the substance use really just made it worse. So there it is, guys. That's my experience dealing with a narcissist, someone with personality disorders. And really, my brother hasn't been diagnosed, but the closest thing to a diagnosis that any doctor has given is basically schizophrenia. So I think it's a mix of schizophrenia, narcissism, and just some kind of borderline personality disorder. But anyway, guys, that's my story going through this. Those are my 4 steps. I'll read them to you one more time. These are the 4 steps I think anyone in this situation needs to go through. Step 1, be honest with yourself. Step 2, watch out for narcissistic tendencies. Step 3, are you enabling the person? Ask yourself that question. Step 4, and then plan your exit strategy. The best thing you can do is leave. Do your best to help the person without enabling them, but at some point you gotta leave, because if you're around this toxicity and negativity enough, it's going to infect you, and you can't let that happen, because it happened to me, and it takes time to kind of detox from the negativity. So anyway, guys, I hope this helps someone out there. I hope anyone in this situation that's watching this video, I hope you just realize you're better than this. You don't need to be around this negativity. And it's probably and leaving this situation is probably going to be one of the most painful things you do. But trust me, you have to leave. You gotta cut it off. You gotta get to the point where you're just done. You have to value yourself enough that you're not going to let yourself be around that negativity anymore, and you just gotta leave. Trust me, it's going to be painful. I did it. It's going to be very painful, but you will thank yourself later when you do leave. Anyway, thanks for watching.